Yo, 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 what's up, my AP Gov squad? It's Mr. H. We're back at it with mini Unit 2 of Unit 2, the interactions among the branches, right? This one is the executive branch. We're going to dive into POTUS, the president, the most powerful office in the United States, if not the world, right? The one with the energy to handle a crisis when needed, right? Think back to the Articles of Confederation, guys. Spiral in some previous stuff, previous knowledge. We had no executive, no one to protect us from domestic or international foreign threats. Domestic being Shays' rebellion, right? So could not handle a crisis, could not energetically step in and save the Union if needed. And so in the Constitutional Convention, this new Constitution, we created the executive branch. The second article of our Constitution lays it out exactly the formal and informal powers of the president and what this branch, this person, will end up being able to do, leading and enforcing the laws of this country, leading the executive branch, the military. And the president has many, many hats, many, many roles, guys, about 7 formal and informal hats and roles where the president will have to be head of state and head of government. Man, this is such an important role, stressful role. And that's why most presidents leave the office with white gray hair when they entered without. Okay, so 4-year terms, must be 35 years or older. Big, big responsibilities here. And with great power comes great responsibility, right? So let's dive into the president and let's get it. Let's go. All right. So, learning objectives for this episode, episode 1, boss mode, the presidency and the people who check it, right? Learning objective 1, explain how the president can implement a policy agenda, right? How the president can persuade and bargain and influence congressmen and women to get certain policy and bills passed through Congress and out of committee onto the floor for debate and then through the conference committee to the president's desk. And then learning objective 2 here, we're combining 2.4 and 2.5 into one episode here. Explain how the president's agenda can create tension, massive tension, and frequent confrontations and beef with Congress, the legislative branch, the House and the Senate, right? And I tell you what, this democracy is a messy, messy situation, but it seems to work. This democratic republic of ours, right? All right, so let's get it. Introduction. Let's go. Locked on AP Gov. All right, y'all, quick story. It's 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962. JFK, President John F. Kennedy's in charge. Heart of the Cold War. And the Soviet Union, the USSR, has placed missiles in Cuba, an island just south of us, a neighbor country. And these missiles are in striking distance of major cities in the United States. National security threat. We are at DEFCON 1 million, right? We are terrified, scared. People are freaking out, right? Your doomsday preppers are like, I told y'all so, and they're going in bomb shelters. Congress, they're slow. Like always, guys, Congress is always slow. Too much discussion, debate, no energy. And if we're going back to the foundational documents, right? One of our foundational docs that we're going to have to know is Federalist 70. Alexander Hamilton writes Federalist 70 in the Federalist Papers, right? Take it all the way back to the Federalists and Anti-Feds, right? A.Ham, Alexander Hamilton, wrote Fed 70 saying that we need one president, not 3, not 5, not a committee, but one person who can be energetic, who has energy to respond in times of crisis, whether it be a hurricane, a rebellion, or an alien invasion, whatever it is, the president must be able to respond and respond quickly without having to get Congress to debate it out and be slow and deliberate, right? Okay, so 1962, Cuban Missile Crisis. Everyone's freaking out. But John F. Kennedy, President JFK, He's sitting in the situation room, the room where it all goes down, right? In times of crisis, this is where your top commanders and generals and president, the commander-in-chief, right, will be making decisions in times of crisis, right? JFK making a call. Naval blockade. That's what we're going to do, right? So one man's decision could quite literally decide if the world blows up or not. Let that sink in. One man's decision could quite literally decide if the world blows up. That's power. And that's the presidency, guys. Big spotlight, big responsibility, big powers. But hold up. Whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not unlimited power. It's not Senator Palpatine turning into Emperor Palpatine, the Sith Lord from the Star Wars trilogy, right? The unlimited power, and lightning coming out of his fingers. No. That's not the power that the president has. But the president is quite powerful. All right? And today we're going to talk about what the president can actually do. The formal powers and informal powers of the presidency and who actually checks those powers, right? This is the cheat codes they use to push their agenda. The president pushes their agenda, right? This is how Congress can clap back. And this is how Congress does clap back when they think the president be doing too much. All right, so let's go. Let's get into it. Let's lock it in. Segment 1, the presidential tool belt, right? Let's get it. The presidential tool belt. This is the president's powers and what he can use to get the job done. All right, so presidents aren't just like walking in. They aren't just walking in, guys, like, hey, Congress. Hey, yo, Congress, fam, pass this bill for me. I think it would be great. Pass this bill. This is my policy agenda. Go ahead and do it for me. No. That's not what happens. President doesn't just walk in and hand him a bill and say, pass this. This is not some rubber stamp Congress. You know what I mean by rubber stamp? This is not just Congress doing whatever the president does, like in Russia right now with Putin. Daddy Putin's in charge. King Putin is in charge. And the Duma, which is their Congress, just does a rubber stamp. Yes, sir. Here you go. Go get it, right? Don't put me in a gulag. If you know, you know. Right? And so they've got a toolbox full of moves, the president does. Some are formal, and that means quite literally straight out of the Constitution. Think they're very much like the enumerated or express powers of Congress. They are quite literally written down, black ink on white paper. You can see it. You can find it. It's there. There's no implied powers there, right? It's formal. It's exclusive. It's expressed. It's enumerated. Very much synonymous there. But they also have something called informal powers, which would be a little bit more implied and built over time through experiences of the presidents, right? And built through influence, right, over time. Okay, so let's get into it. First up on the types of powers, veto power. Veto power. This is the presidential Uno reverse card, guys. Congress passes a sus bill. We've talked about it. A bill no one likes. The president can say, nah, fam. Whoa, nah, fam. It's dead. I veto this sus bill. It's 6-7, if you know what I mean. And unless Congress comes back with a 2/3 supermajority, right? 2/3 supermajority, which is hard to do and rarely can get it, right? It's not going to get passed. So it doesn't happen often, overturning a presidential veto, but when it does, it's like your squad ignoring the group leader. An example of this, guys, Congress overrode President Nixon, right? Nixon, the president during Vietnam. They overturned President Nixon's veto of the War Powers Resolution in 1973. And boom, that was a checkmate move there. But the thing with this, and we need to know what the War Powers Resolution is. So President Nixon was sending troops abroad to Vietnam, right? Vietnam War, sending billions of dollars, sending troops abroad. And Congress felt like the president had expanded his power way too much. Massive overreach by the president. Remember, spiral this back in from our previous units. Who declares war? And who commands the power of the purse? Congress. And so they said Nixon was sending billions of dollars in troops abroad without their consent. Violation here. Right? And so they passed the War Powers Resolution, which means what? After 60 days, the president must get everything. If he sends troops abroad or money abroad, must get reapproved or approval after 60 days from Congress. And the president must notify them of when he sends troops abroad. Okay, so it's just a check and balance there on the president's commander-in-chief power. However, after this War Powers Resolution was passed, and President Nixon tried to veto it, right? 2/3 voted and overrode the presidential veto. Every president just about since has said, forget this. They have thumbed their nose at this and said, nah, we're commander-in-chief of the military. You have no rights here. No. So Trump did it with the recent bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities. Barack Obama did it. Bill Clinton did it. Bush did it. It has been challenged after challenge after challenge from Democrat and Republican presidents. All right. So let's get it. Next one. And then there's the pocket veto, guys. That's when Congress is about to go on and break, when they're about to go on break. All right. So Congress will meet in session officially, and then they'll break and come back. So if a bill was sent to the president has 10 days to sign it or veto it or do nothing. And after 10 days, not including Sunday, God's day, that bill will go back to Congress. No action taken, the bill will go back to Congress. If Congress is not in session, they're on break, it dies. It's immediately killed. If they are still meeting, it is immediately passed. So that is another veto power. All right. So I went ahead and dropped in what I would put in the notes here, guys, for veto and for pocket veto. Make sure you guys are filling this out. I'm going to try and actually fill this in as we go with you guys. So just double check, make sure you can pause and stop and write it in, but make sure we're getting these notes in here, guys. This is such a non-negotiable. Make sure you're doing your job in this class, which is listen, read, write, lock in this podcast information, guys. I put in all this work for you to get this stuff done and created. You got to put the work in as well. This is a team. Right here, guys. We are collaborating. We are working together. We are working together. This is not gridlock. Don't gridlock me here and do nothing, guys. This is something a non-negotiable for this class. We got to get at least 90% of y'all to pass the AP exam. I need you to do your job. Stay dangerous. We're week 6. Week 6. Stay dangerous. I need you to lock it in, guys. Got to pass this AP exam. All right. Let's keep going. Okay, so now on to foreign policy, right? And remember I talked about different hats the president wears. The president wears many, many hats, right? When the president's influencing policy, the president's vetoing, this is like chief executive let me back up. That's chief legislature, right? Chief lawmaker. So the president does wear a legislative hat, so to speak. Now we're going to get into commander-in-chief. Oh, man, and treaties, right? So this is that commander-in-chief hat, right? Leader, the civilian leader of our military. So formal powers here. President's the commander-in-chief. That means directly in charge of the military. Remember, World War II, FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, dies in office in his third term, right, if I'm not mistaken. Dies in office. President Harry Truman is then sworn in, right? So Vice President Truman is sworn in. And at this time in the war, right, there's a decision. Should atomic bombs be used in Japan, right? Should this new atomic bomb created in the Manhattan Project by Oppenheimer as the lead scientist, right, who recognized this bomb as a danger, right, a threat to humanity, right? And he even quoted for saying, "What have I done? I have become death, destroyer of worlds." Right? This atomic bomb is super powerful, right? And Truman has the scary and terrible decision of, do we use it to save American lives or do we not use it and risk more American lives with an invasion of Japan? And so remember, President Truman, he dropped the bomb on 2 cities in Japan, killing civilians and soldiers alike. Saved American troops' lives, Americans' lives. What a tough and horrible decision that had to have been made, but some would say necessary, right? To save American lives and end the terrible war of World War II, right? And yeah, Congress didn't vote on that. That was a presidential decision there as commander-in-chief. All right, next up, treaties. All right, treaties. I went ahead and dropped in what I would put here for this. Make sure you add an example possibly, right? All right, so treaties, the president negotiates them, right? So the president is chief diplomat. It's another hat, right? Chief diplomat has the power to negotiate treaties with other heads of states, heads of governments, right? Heads of states. But the Senate, the upper house, right? The upper chamber of our bicameral legislature has to say yes with two-thirds vote, so supermajority here. And so ask Woodrow Wilson, President Wilson during World War I, right? He negotiated the League of Nations, like a precursor to the United Nations, right? And also the Treaty of Versailles, which is the treaty to end World War I, right? So helped negotiate these 2 deals. And the Senate was like, nope, nah, sorry. We know you did all this work, but we're not going to do it. And so we didn't join. We didn't join the League of Nations, and all that hard work President Wilson did, was all for naught, right? Awkward. All right, informal power. Let's look at it. Executive agreements. Now, these are like handshake deals with other countries, guys. Other countries' head of states. No Senate is needed, so it's very much a treaty, but without Senate approval. And it only lasts as long as the president is in office, and then it can be removed. So President FDR, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had agreements with Winston Churchill, the head of state, the head of government of Great Britain. Now, the monarchy is that traditional figurehead, right? But the leader of Great Britain during that time would be Winston Churchill, the bulldog that saved Great Britain from the Nazis in Germany, right? And then you have Barack Obama, right? President Obama, who signed the Paris Climate Accords to help try and solve global warming. Trump pulled us out of it. President Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords, said we were paying too much. Other countries needed to pay more, do more. And then Biden put us right back in, right? So all of this without Senate approval. Executive agreement. Okay, next tool, bargaining and persuasion. So think LBJ for a second. LBJ, President Lyndon B. Johnson, the vice president for President Kennedy, who took over after Kennedy was assassinated. He is from Texas, a former public speech teacher, right? He used to teach public speaking. Becomes president. LBJ. This dude was a master manipulator. He literally would get in people's faces and lean over them as a tall man and say, you're voting for the civil rights movement, voting for the Civil Rights Act, voting for civil rights. And they did. That's presidential pressure. Big time. And then everybody's favorite, executive orders. This carries the weight of law, but don't need Congress to actually to vote on it, right? Executive orders, very, very powerful power here. Informal power. Informal power. This is the presidential cheat code. President Lincoln used it to pass the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing slaves in southern states during the Civil War. President Truman, he desegregated the military. Man, powerful move. President Biden canceled the Keystone Pipeline permit, the oil pipeline permit, the gas pipeline to help save the environment, so to speak, right? They're fast, powerful, flashy. President Trump has passed more than any president since FDR. Just passed one on flag burning, making it illegal if it incites violence. 1 year up to 1 year in jail if you're found guilty. But they can also be undone by the next president or blocked in federal court, district or Supreme Court. They both have original jurisdictions, right? So courts can also block an order if they believe it unconstitutional. Okay, and last one here, signing statements. These are presidential subtweets. Subtweets, right? The president signs a law but adds, by the way, here's how I see it. So once Congress passes a bill, president signs it. The president's the enforcer, the hammer of the law, right? And so underneath him, there's about 2.9 million bureaucrats. These are workers in government that make the day-to-day operations go. There's agencies and departments, and they all fall within the executive branch. And in order to make sure a law is enforced, like a hammer, right? Like the president wants it to be, the president will have a signing statement at the bottom of this new law, letting them know how they want this law enforced. To do a great job of enforcing it or to not do a great job of enforcing it. That's a powerful power there by the president, okay? So the president signs a law but adds, by the way, here's how I see it. George W. Bush used them a ton after 9/11, the terrorist attack, September 11th, to basically say, I'll follow this law, but in my own way. I believe we should enforce it my way, not necessarily how Congress intended it. And then there's other situations where maybe President Barack Obama or like Biden didn't agree with an immigration law. They could do a signing statement saying, don't enforce this immigration law very strongly or very much. So yeah, presidents have receipts, vetoes, treaties, commander-in-chief powers. They've got vibes, persuasion, bargaining, executive agreements, executive orders, signing statements. And together, that's their toolbox. All right, stop real quick and check out the notes, okay? I paused and went ahead and put in what I would do. So if you want to pause it now and write it in, lock it in, let's get it, okay? So commander-in-chief treaty stuff we already got. Executive agreements we got right here too, right? That's what I would put for this right here. And then with bargaining and persuasion, right? Oh, there it is. I would do something like this, right? And then here, executive orders, something like this, right? I mean, these are your notes, guys. Do them the way you want, but this is kind of how I would. And if you want to pause it, do so. And then signing statement. Let's go ahead and get that one, right? Signing statement for you guys. Paste it in there for you from when I have my answer key here, right? This is what I would put. Something like this, right? Pause it. Moving on to segment 2 now. All right, segment 2. The presidential squad. All right, we got to talk about who works underneath the president, helps him run his branch. All right, eventually her, right? When a female wins, which will happen eventually. Now, let's be real. No president is out here soloing the mission on their own. There's no free soloing the mission on their own. No. They've got a squad, and I mean the ultimate squad, right? So you have the president, and underneath the president, they have a running mate called the vice president. Now, initially, the vice president was the runner-up, the one that lost the election. And eventually they would change that because they wanted someone who would work collaboratively with the president, not against the president. So now they pick a running partner, and that running mate is usually selected to bring in more votes to win the election, right? And so if I'm say Trump, an old white man from New York, I might consider selecting a female as a running mate or partner, a black or brown minority selection to bring in more votes, or maybe a younger white male from a swing state like Ohio, like J.D. Vance. Whoever you pick, like Joe Biden, pick Kamala Harris, a minority female, right? Whoever you pick, typically it's to win and garnish more votes. And once the election's over, some vice presidents are told, go off into the corner, sit there, and don't cause a problem, while others are asked to help run the executive branch. Very much like J.D. Vance right now in Trump. He's being used to help run government. He's very much an active vice president. While as there's some others who are not really meant to do much but other than sit there, cause no issues, and get them reelected. All right, so vice president, once upon a time, guys, it's most boring job ever, right? And I believe it was John Adams who literally called it the most insignificant office ever contrived. He even called it, he said, I am nothing, quite literally nothing, but could potentially be everything if he became president. But now, vice presidents matter. Like I said, George W. Bush's vice president, Dick Cheney, Vice President Cheney basically ran defense after 9/11, the terrorist attack on the trade centers. He actually helped run defense. So this guy ran government for George W. Bush. Really, really important VP. And Kamala Harris has been breaking ties in the Senate underneath President Joe Biden's tenure as president, right? This past year and past 4 years was breaking ties, right? Like it was her part-time job. And the reason for that is because we were almost 50-50 split in the Senate, Senate, Republican and Democrat. So her job very much break ties in the Senate. Otherwise, that's all their power is, break ties in the Senate and be next in line to the presidency. All right. Next up, cabinet, right? The cabinet. Okay. Cabinet members, there's 15 department heads. Initially, there were only 3. Only 3 initially. Secretary of State, Secretary of War, and Secretary of the Treasury, right? Those were your first 3 departments, your original. Now, Secretary of War, or Department of War is now Department of Defense, okay? But over time, they've expanded and added more departments where needed. The most recent is Department of Homeland Security, created after 9/11. And now some would say President Trump with this 2025, that DOGE, D-O-J-E, Department of Government Efficiency, is the 16th department unofficially. Okay, but your department heads would be what? Defense, state, education. You know the drill. There's 15 of them. And they implement the president's policies. But sometimes they push back and they ask maybe President Trump, right? Why are we doing this? Or maybe no, whoa, slow down. And when that happens, presidents like Trump, they'll burn through cabinet members like a Netflix series nobody finished, right? Kind of like when Trump was the head of the reality TV show, The Apprentice, right? You're fired. You're fired. You're fired, right? So President Trump in his first time in office ran through quite a few department heads. But this second time in office this year, so far, pretty consistent, stable. Seems like they're collaborative, working together. And then you have the Executive Office of the President, the EOP. And these are the nerds behind the curtain, right? Nerds, not a bad thing. Nerds behind the brains behind the curtain, right? And you also have the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, who handles the money. OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, which handles the money. The National Security Council, who handles the nukes, the atomic bombs, right? And global drama. The NSC, National Security Council. And then the White House office staff, right? The White House staff, they keep the machine moving so the president doesn't look like a total clown on camera, guys. And so that's big. And the EOP, right, the Executive Office of the President, plays a very important role. Anywhere from management of the bureaucracy, right, and the budget of the bureaucracy, right, running the executive branch, paying the 2.9 million bureaucrats and workers and helping with that, right? Or the National Security Council dealing with nuclear weapons in crisis, or maybe just the White House staff helping things run day to day. All right. All right. We're back at it. Almost done. Stick with me, I know. Okay. So, I went ahead and posted in what I would do for the notes here, right? So we got that there. That's what I would do. Oh, of course, make them sticky for yourself, right? Make them good for you. And you can pause this and fill it in if you like, right? Pause, fill in, and we're going to keep going, okay? All right, segment 3. We're going, and I'll go quick here. I've yapped. Let's keep going. Segment 3. Congress claps back. These are your checks. This is topic 2.5. We just did 2.4. All right, now let's talk about the drama. Congress is not just chilling. They've got checks laid out in the Constitution, right? Thank you, Baron de Montesquieu from Unit 1. Thanks for the separation of powers, checks and balances, right? Federalist 51, James Madison laid out separation of powers. Ambition must check ambition. Man, spiral all that stuff back in. And they use these checks, right? So the Senate confirmation is a big one. Senate confirmation is a massive one. Massive one, right? The president can nominate cabinet members, department heads, ambassadors to foreign countries, judges to the federal courts, not just the Supreme Court, but all federal positions. But the Senate gets final say. Ever hear of Robert Bork? Oh, I know you haven't. Robert Bork. President Reagan, 80s, President Reagan, tried to put him on the Supreme Court in 1987. This is over 37 years ago or so. Tried to put Robert Bork on the Supreme Court. The 9 justices, right, on the highest court of the land. And the Supreme Court dragged him so hard that Borked became slang for getting destroyed in a confirmation hearing. So getting borked meant you got dragged through the mud so hard, okay? So I thought that'd be funny to bring in, right? You just got borked. Okay, and don't forget, judges serve for life, guys. They serve for life upon good behavior, whatever that means, right? Good behavior. They serve for life. And in Federalist 78, Alexander Hamilton, there he is again, drops in Federalist 78 about the judicial branch. They serve for life to prevent influence from other branches or from public opinion, right? It keeps them insulated. It keeps them protected from public pressure. Okay, and that allows them to be nonpartisan, not affiliated with any sort of political party or any need to run for re-election, right? They can just look at the Constitution and say, this is allowed or this is not. This is unconstitutional. Okay? All right. This is the president's long game here. So think of this, right? The president can appoint a Supreme Court justice or federal judge, and if they are approved by the Senate, this is the president affecting generational things 10, 20, 30 years down the road. Trump appointed over 200 federal judges his first time in office, including 3 Supreme Court justices his first time in office. Decades from now, those decisions are still shaping abortion rights today. Dobbs v. Jackson Women Clinic, anyone? Roe v. Wade getting struck down, anyone? States get to choose their own abortion laws, anyone? Side-eye? Gun laws and federal power, this is all going to be decided in the courts. And that's legacy right there, guys. That's power. Then there's policy conflict, right? Congress has its own playlist. If it doesn't match with the president's vibe, gridlock. Ultimate check here. Gridlock. Tie it up, put it in a traffic jam. That's when the presidents whip out executive orders like, fine, I'll do it myself, fam. If you're not going to help me create gridlock, I'll just pass an executive order and go around you. And President Obama did this with DACA, which is the Dreamers Act, which was designed to give amnesty to a large group of immigrants who were under a certain age. Giving amnesty, that means citizenship to a large number. If I don't want to give you a wrong number, but I believe over 1 million immigrants, citizenship. And Trump did this with travel bans, right, from specifically Muslim countries. Biden tried to pass an executive order to eliminate student loans, but that was blocked. But here's the kicker. Courts can shut them down. And Biden's student loan plan, yeah, guys, it was shut down by the Supreme Court saying it was unconstitutional. Nope. And that's check and balance in action. Okay, so let's get segment 4, real world drama. And let's run through the presidential highlight reel real quick, okay? President Lincoln suspended habeas corpus. That means rights of prisoners, okay? Right to not be tortured, to be given food, water, decent living standards, right, in prison. Habeas corpus during the Civil War. Bold move, controversial move. But it was a total war to save the Union, and it's justified there, according to those who supported Lincoln's decision. President Truman tried to seize steel mills during the Korean War. The Supreme Court slapped him down in Youngstown versus Sawyer, saying, no, you can't do that. President Nixon claimed executive privilege powers in Watergate scandal. Supreme Court again said, nah, fam, hand over those tapes, those recorded tapes from your Oval Office. We want to find out what really went down. And if so, impeach your butt, right, and get you out. President Barack Obama used executive orders for DACA, the Dreamers Act, right? When Congress froze on immigration policy, he passed that executive order. The courts are still wrestling with it today, guys, and Trump is definitely on the opposite side here of the spectrum when it comes to immigration policy. And we're seeing Trump pass executive orders. He passed one to create a border wall, and now he's definitely handling some right now with ICE and trying to find illegals and deport or remove them. All right, President Trump issued executive orders left and right during his first term. Travel bans, wall funding, immigration wall funding on the border, southern border, and stacking the judiciary with conservative judges, judicial restraint judges, judges that would rule in favor of conservative or Republican policies. Biden walked in on day one with a stack of executive orders reversing Trump's. Right? That's the power of the president. Reverse the previous president's executive orders. Then trying to cancel student debt with another. It was blocked by the courts. And then Trump, he's currently having a field day throwing out executive orders left and right like he's Oprah. You get an order. You get an order. You get an order. Specifically, the flag burning ban is a big one. Okay, so different presidents, different errors, right? Same theme, though. President's pushing back in Congress, and the court's pushing back at the president. So the president's push, and Congress and courts push back against the president in his fight for unlimited power. And that's the rhythm of checks and balances. Push and shove, pull, push, and then push back, right? Especially in a divided government, right? Where Congress or one chamber of Congress is dominated by one political party and maybe the president or the other chamber is dominated by another. And so when you have two political parties that have power in either the executive branch or legislative branch, right? It leads to having to have more compromises and gridlock. Right? So where one party controls the White House and the other runs at least one chamber of Congress, that's when gridlock happens, and presidents often reach for executive orders when that happens. Okay, but what about a unified government? When one party controls the presidency and Congress, that's when everything moves fast, guys, really fast and rapid, and the majority party can push through its agenda with fewer roadblocks, fewer gridlock. The president's influence is amplified, right? His agenda gets amplified and Congress listens to it and implements it in its bills. So think FDR's New Deal, right? With Democrats controlling everything, or President Trump's first 2 years in office back in 2016, 17-ish, right? When Republicans held the House and Senate, tax cuts took place for the wealthiest and for Americans. Judicial confirmations were unopposed. Supreme Court justices were appointed. Big wins stacked up quickly in his first 100 days. And even this year, guys, even this year in 2025, This summer, President Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress were able to pass the big, beautiful bill, the omnibus bill, the combo mill bill, right? So many things involved in this big, beautiful bill that would expand the debt ceiling to $6 trillion, right? To increase that. And it's a massive funding bill too, guys. It was a huge win for the Republican Party, the majority party, and they were able to do it because of unified government. And so here's the big picture. Divided government equals tension and slow gridlock, right? Slow grind. Unified government, the majority party wins big. And they win big, big. All right, segment 5, AP Gold. All right, AP exam mode, lock this in. Formal powers, veto powers, and that includes pocket veto. Commander-in-chief of the military powers, and the right to negotiate treaties. Not approve them, but to negotiate them. All right, informal powers of the president, think bargaining and persuasion. Like LBJ, all right, Lyndon B. Johnson, standing over them and being a master manipulator. You will vote for civil rights, and they do. Intimidation and pressure, right? Think executive agreements, they're like treaties, but don't need Senate approval. Executive orders, they're like laws, but don't need Congress involved. Executive privilege, you can keep your communications secret, which is the president's prerogative, right? Or signing statements. This is how I think this law should be enforced, or maybe not really effectively enforced, right? Up to the president. The squad, you have the vice president and your cabinet or department heads, and the EOP, the Executive Office of President, which includes the National Security Council. It includes the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, which helps run the bureaucracy, the 2.9 million workers, and the White House staff that runs the day-to-day operations. The cabinet members are 15 department heads called secretaries for the most part. And the VP now is actually their running mate, right? And they do a lot more than they used to. Checks on the president, Senate confirmations of federal judges, ambassadors, and all those things, cabinet members. Judicial review, seeing if this executive order is actually even legal. Federal courts can help tie up the president and block the president. And Congress's own agenda will conflict with the president's agenda. And then you have legacy moves, right? Like lifetime tenures for federal judges. President Trump, whether you like it or not, will have a lasting impact on America for generations to come because he has appointed 3 Supreme Court justices and well over 200 federal judges to the lower federal courts. And then big cases, like Lincoln and habeas corpus. That was a big move there. A lot of people were upset with that, and a lot of people said he had to do it to keep the Union together in the Civil War. Truman and the steel mills during the Korean War. Nixon and executive privilege during Watergate scandal. Obama and the Dreamers, immigrants that needed amnesty to become citizens, right? And then Trump's judges being confirmed immediately without much being blocked. Or his border wall funding. Or Biden's student loan forgiveness that was struck down. That's everything you need to flex on the AP exam, guys. Lock those in. Outro, long one here, but we combined 2 episodes into one, like a conference committee. Take 2 bills and make one. How about that? So yeah, the president is powerful, flashy, main character energy, but never unchecked. Never unlimited Emperor Palpatine power. Presidents make moves. Congress checks receipts. Courts step in and act like referees and pull a red card like in soccer. That tension, that's dysfunction. Nah, fam, that's not dysfunction. Not dysfunction. That's democracy. Messy, but how we want it, all right? Stay bold, stay curious, stay locked on AP Gov. Mr. H out. Peace. See y'all tomorrow.